Airports are full of announcements, but the one I grew up with was never spoken out loud. It hummed beneath everything my parents did. You are a courtesy, not a priority. At the curb, my father checked the time like it owed him interest. My mother tightened the strap on her handbag, already halfway into the terminal in her mind. "Boarding passes," Dad said, palm out. He never said please when there was a clock nearby. I handed mine over. He held it next to theirs, frowning like the paper had made a mistake. "Economy?" he said, reading my row number as if it were a diagnosis. He didn't meet my eyes when he added, "We'll see you at the gate." "Row 24, Mom said, scanning. "We're 4. We'll be close." She said we and did not include me. "It's fine," I said, because that is the sentence invisible children learn first. The syllables fit like an old coat, thin, familiar, not warm. Inside the glass and noise, people moved in purposeful line. Families negotiating shoelaces and strollers. A teenager dragging a cello case that looked heavier than his future. A woman in a choral dress laughing into her phone. My parents walked the way they do at museum, hands clasped behind their backs, pausing only to comment. Dad pointed at a departure board. "We could have taken the earlier flight," he said to Mom, sidestepping the fact that I'd chosen this one because it was affordable. She nodded like a curator agreeing with a placard. At the kiosk, I typed my name with the care of someone trying to spell themselves into existence. 3 pieces of paper clattered out. Dad scooped all of them up, then peeled mine off like a receipt. "Don't lose it," he said, handing it back without touching. "You have a tendency." It took me a second to realize he meant losing things, not people. Or maybe he meant both. In the security line, Mom's tone got soft, the way it does when she compliments strangers. "I love your scarf," she told the woman behind us, admiring its pattern, the weave of blue and burnt orange. She did not ask how I was sleeping. She did not notice my nails bitten down to careful raggedness. Dad held his shoes by the heels, one finger hooked in each, and announced to no one that TSA had made the lanes slower. "They changed the layout," he said. "I can tell." "Of course you can," Mom said, warm with admiration for a skill that existed mostly in his head. On the other side, he repacked with precision. I repacked with practice. As we walked toward the gate, Mom said, "Your brother sent a picture of the cake. Very elegant." The cake was the reason for the trip. So was the will reading. We have never been a family that does one thing at a time. I asked, "How is he?" "Busy," Dad said, which is our family's favorite compliment. It means a schedule is loving you better than people are. At the gate, they staked out the front row of chairs like a claim. Dad put his garment bag across a seat not to be used. Mom set her tote on another. I sat 2 rows back. A little boy in dinosaur pajamas whacked his father's knee with a foam sword. The father pretended to die dramatically, and the boy climbed on him with the joy of being allowed to be the center. I looked at my phone. A message from Evan blinked at the top. "Running the slideshow. You found those childhood photos of yours?" I stared at the screen long enough to understand the humor. Yours was a category he did not believe existed. "I'll bring what I have," I wrote, which meant no, without sounding like it. Mom returned from the counter with 2 drink vouchers. "For us," she said, pressing them into Dad's hand. "Status, perks." She sat and finally looked at me. "Do you have a bag to check? We don't have time for that." "It's a weekend," I said, lifting my backpack a little. "I travel light." Dad leaned back, 2 fingers pressed to the pulse in his neck like a metronome. "Boarding starts in 10, he said, his voice the sound announcements learn from. He and Mom shared that little smile married people do when they agree about something without saying it. The smile did not include me. I remembered being 8, sitting at the top of the stairs while they discussed summer plan. "We'll do the lake house," Dad said. "It's peaceful. For the 3 of us," Mom said, meaning the 3 of them, and even then not noticing the math. I had counted the balusters on the railing until numbers felt safer than noun. "Group 1, the agent called now, and the business cabin stood like a ripple, moving toward the scanning line. Dad stood too, looking at his boarding pass as if he had discovered it had improved while he watched. Mom rose, smoothing the front of her linen jacket. I lifted my bag. "Wait," Dad said, gesturing with a finger that pointed and cut. "They'll call your group." "They called mine," I said, showing the same white paper he held. He glanced, made a calculation about optics, and then nodded. "Stay close," he said, which in our language means follow, don't lead. The jet bridge breathed its refrigerated breath. At the door, the flight attendant, short hair, quick eyes, smiled. Her name tag read, Lena. "Welcome aboard." "Thank you," Mom said, the accent she uses for service workers slipping into her voice. Brighter, flatter, auditioning for gracious. Dad turned left. I turned right. It wasn't cruel, exactly. It was an equation solved without me. They had upgraded themselves. I had not asked. I found row 24, center seat, the kind of assignment that thinks it is an apology because it puts you between two things. My seatmates were already there. A man with a crossword, neat handwriting in ink, and a woman with a wide-brimmed hat she tucked carefully under the seat ahead. "Sorry," I said, because that is the sentence invisible children learn second. "No worries," the man said. "We all end up somewhere." The overhead bin near us was full, so I walked 2 rows back and found space there. I thought of Dad saying, "Don't lose it," and held the strap longer than necessary to prove him wrong. When I sat, the man with the crossword glanced at my hand. "Big day?" he asked, not unkindly. "Family," I said. "Ah," he said, and did not ask which kind. People who like words know some are grenades. Up front, I could see the edge of Mom's hair over the high-backed seats, Dad's elbow in its blazer sleeve, a line straight as a rule. Lena and another attendant moved with the choreography of competence, checking belts, adjusting, answering early questions in the way that lets people feel smart for asking. A toddler 2 rows ahead of me banged a plastic giraffe against the armrest. His mother offered him a cracker with one hand and apology eyes with the other. "Don't worry," the woman in the hat said to her. "Crackers are sacred." When Lena reached us, she looked at me and smiled. Not the professional upward curve, the kind that recognizes a person. "All set?" she asked. "Mostly," I said, surprising myself with the truth. "We'll take good care of you," she said. The words were routine. They fell differently than usual. We pushed back, the ground moving under us like a trick. The man with the crossword folded his paper for takeoff, pressed his palms to his thighs, the way people do when they want to land already. I looked through the little gap between seats toward the front. Mom's head tilted toward Dad's. She said something. He laughed. I couldn't hear it. In the silence, my mind supplied the script they always prefer. "We'll need to remind Evan to thank the attorney. The chef at the restaurant said the oysters are reliable. Did you see the way she packed that bag? It looks heavy." When the wheels left the ground, I felt the usual lift and the usual small betrayal of the body. That moment when you trust metal and strangers more than gravity. The city shrank into rows of glitter and seam lines, a quilt someone had made without my input. When the seatbelt sign chimed off, the aisle woke as if on cue. A man in a cardigan stood immediately to claim a restroom. A teenager stretched his legs into the space like a dare. Lena returned with a tray. "Something to drink?" she asked, bracing her hip against the aisle so the cart wouldn't drift. "Water, please," I said. "No ice." "Hydration," she said, approving. To the man with the crossword, "Coffee? Tea?" He ordered tea and, as she poured, looked at me again. Not nosy, just present. "You travel alone a lot?" he asked. "I'm good at it," I said. He nodded. "You'd have to be." My phone, in airplane mode but still a repository of earlier buzzing, showed a string of unread messages in the family group chat. Mom's photo of a floral arrangement, classic lilies, natural. Dad's comment about traffic. Denver does not understand lanes, of course. Evan's frantic. Will the boardroom have HDMI? As if there were a possibility it would not for him. Mom had sent me a separate text. "Remember to wear the black dress. It photographs well." Below it, a second. "Don't wear the boots." I typed "got it" and did not send it. Then I typed "I like the boots" and did not send that either. When Lena passed again, she paused at the front of our section, speaking low into the intercom. Over the white noise of flight, I heard bits of the captain's voice. "Smooth ride, light chop, on time." The crossword man drew a little boat in the corner of his paper when he couldn't think of a 6-letter word for a bird that migrates across hemispheres. "What's 7 across?" I asked, pointing. "Kin," he said, "but the clue is chosen, so maybe found." "Found," I repeated, testing the word in my mouth. It felt like something I had misplaced, without knowing it had belonged to me. At some point, a flight attendant from the front cabin came to confer with Lena. A whisper, a hand motion, the universal language of service. "We need 2 meals switched," someone said. 4 wants fish, but 5 couldn't choose. I watched Mom's elbow lift, Dad gesturing with 2 fingers the way he does when he's asked a waiter to give him a minute, and then uses the minute to order for everyone. The flight attendant smiled the way you smile at beaches in brochures. I couldn't see if they said, "Thank you." The woman with the hat asked me what I was reading. I held up the spine of my paperback. "Family memoir," she said, approving. "Brave choice." "It was on sale," I said, which was also true. "Sometimes the things that cost least make you pay the most," she said, not unkindly. The turbulence, when it came, was brief and more sound than motion. The aisle shivered, the overhead bins murmured. The toddler's giraffe took flight and hit the floor with a soft thunk. "Oh," his mother said, then laughed, relieved the drama was small enough to be adorable. Lena came on the speaker to remind us to keep belts fastened when seated. Her voice sounded like reassurance woven through a loom. A memory arrived abruptly, the way they do in the air, when altitude knocks things loose. I was 10, on a road trip. Evan and I in the back seat, Mom in front with the map, Dad announcing exits like he had cut them into the highway himself. Evan had a migraine. Mom turned in her seat, her hand on his forehead. "Poor thing," she cooed. "He's so sensitive." She did not look at me. Later, when we stopped for lunch, a waitress brought an extra napkin rolled around the cutlery. Dad thanked her with the gratitude of a man who believes public manners are a currency. The napkin had an imprint of a blue heron on it, the restaurant's logo. I kept it, folding and unfolding until the heron wore creases like a topographical map. When we left, my napkin wasn't in my pocket anymore. Dad had said, "We don't take things that aren't ours." He had walked out with a toothpick in his mouth. Now, I unfolded the airline napkin on my tray and smoothed it flat, pressing my thumb along its edge until the paper warmed. The crossword man leaned closer. "Artist?" he asked. "Fidgeter," I said. "That's a kind of artist," he said. Up front, Mom stood to root around in the overhead bin. Dad rose too, protective of the right to stand, not of her. Lena was there in an instant. "I can get that for you," she said. Mom smiled with that modesty she can access on command. "Oh, I'm fine," she said. "I'm very capable." "Of course," Lena said. "Let me know if you need anything." Mom lowered herself back into the seat. Item retrieved, conversation completed. She did not turn to look down the aisle. She did not think of waving. The couple behind me spoke softly about a house they had seen online, whether the yard would flood. The man in the cardigan returned from the lavatory with a paper towel stuck to his shoe. Nobody told him. The teenage boy built a tiny theater on his tray table with pretzels pretending to be people. I could hear the low murmur of the first-class galley, plates whispering against each other. Dad laughed, and it was so bright it made me look up. "Do you need anything?" Lena asked when she came back through. It took me a second to realize she was talking to me. "I'm okay," I said. "Good," she said. She started to move on, then reconsidered, the way people do when they choose a risk with good odds. "If you get off after them," she said, tilting her head toward the front, "meet me at the door. I'll try to hold the aisle so you're not crushed." "I'm used to being crushed," I said, before my brain knew we were telling the truth. She blinked, then smiled in that way. "That means I heard you anyway. We'll make space," she said. "Promise." I nodded, and the napkin on my tray felt heavier, as if someone had added a corner of dignity to it when I wasn't watching. The hours stretched, the way they do when the air gets its grip on your sense of time. I took small sips of water like they were rations from a kind future. The crossword man fell asleep, his pen uncapped, a blue comma on his thumb. The woman with the hat wrote a postcard in looping handwriting, then tucked it into a book as if it needed shelter. I watched a movie without sound on the screen 2 rows ahead, the subtitles telling me a story about a sea and a woman who walked into it and then out again. The toddler finally slept, the giraffe under his cheek. Mom sent another text. "Do not bring up the house during the reading, it's tasteless." Below it, "Smile in the family photo." I typed "sure" and did not send it. I typed, "When have I ever not smiled?" and did not send that either. When the trash bags came, Lena's colleague collected paper cups and secret. "We're beginning our descent," she said, and the cabin started to rehearse landing. Belts pulled tight, tray tables clicked like tisk, tisk. "Do you live in Denver?" the crossword man asked when he woke. "Used to," I said. "We moved when I was 13. Back for good things?" he asked. "Back for endings," I said. He nodded, like he understood. Maybe he did. There is a frequency endings hum at that only certain strangers hear. As we tilted, the window offered the city up in slices. Brown River, white bridge, the pale green oval of a stadium. In the aisle, Lena placed a hand on a shoulder here, a seat back there. Small touchstone so people would know where steadiness was. We broke through a cloud, and the light did that blinding thing that makes you squint at the future. We landed firm. The applause was minimal, thank God. It always embarrasses me, like clapping for gravity, like congratulating the ground for showing up. The seatbelt sign chimed off, and the aisle became a diagram of American urgency. People stood with their heads tilted, backs curved, arms lifted to retrieve the lives they had checked overhead. My row waited. The crossword man capped his pen. The woman with the hat adjusted the angle so it wouldn't knock anyone when she stood. Up front, I saw Dad's blazer disappear up the aisle. Mom's linen jacket followed, as crisp as when she put it on. The curtain between us swayed once and then settled as if the plane had breathed out and chose who to exhale. Lena caught my eye and pointed. "Now." I slipped into the aisle. A woman in yoga pants stepped back to let me pass, a small courtesy that felt like a parade. At the door, Lena stood with one hand on the frame. "There you are," she said. "Go ahead." "Thanks," I said. "For seeing me," she shrugged, like it was easy. "Some people are hard to miss, even when they try." On the jet bridge, cool air and concrete smell and the fluid relief of being a moving body again, I caught a glimpse over my shoulder. A man from row 21, the one in the navy linen jacket who'd kept glancing without staring, was a few passengers behind me. He looked at my face the way people look at portraits in museums, not for the brush strokes, but for evidence. When our eyes met, he gave a small nod, almost like acknowledgement, almost like recognition, the ghost of a smile that said, "I will speak to you in a place where words land better." I stepped into the terminal and waited to the side for my parents, because that is the choreography I know. When they emerged, Dad was already walking, phone against his ear. "We'll be at the car in 10, he told someone. "Yes, I'll call the attorney." Mom adjusted the strap on her handbag. "We should freshen up before seeing anyone," she said. She looked at me long enough to see that I existed. "You have everything?" "I have what's mine," I said. "Good," she said, not hearing the sentence the way I meant it. We moved toward baggage claim, carried along by a river of rolling suitcases and the solemnity of arrival. Above us, a sign flashed, Carousel 6, Flight 218, Denver. The sound of bags thudding onto the belt echoed the old drums of my heart. Dad positioned himself where the luggage first fell, a general choosing a hill. Mom stood near the carts, plucking lint from her sleeve. I took a place slightly behind them, where I could see both the conveyor and the space between us. The man in the navy linen jacket sat on the bench opposite, hands folded, eyes on me, not unkind. He waited the way a person waits who has decided they will not miss their moment. My suitcase slid down the metal ramp, old, scuffed, honest. I reached for it and let it circle once, not ready to hold anything heavy. Mom watched a sleek black case and said, "That one looks like ours," only to discover it wasn't. Dad called Evan. "We're here," he said. "Don't start without us." He didn't say my name. When my bag came around again, I pulled it off, the handle warm from other hand. I set it upright, and it wobbled a little before finding its feet, the way I sometimes do. Mom looked at the bag and said nothing. Dad kept his phone at his ear. The man in linen stood slowly and walked toward us, the way you approach a skittish animal or a miracle. "Excuse me," he said. "Not to my father, not to my mother, to me. I'm sorry to bother you. I think I know you." Mom's head turned sharply. Dad stopped mid-word. The belt thudded, and somewhere a child laughed at the slapstick of luggage. I opened my mouth and closed it again. He smiled, nerves and certainty braided together. "I'll explain," he said. "If that's all right." It's been a long time. Mom's fingers tightened on the cart handle. Dad's jaw shifted toward anger. The man looked at them briefly, then back at me with the relief of a person who has crossed a desert and found water where a map promised there would be none. Your name, he said softly, is a story, and I think I know how it begins. I did not know yet what he would tell me in the fluorescent hum of baggage claim, in front of the carousel that turned like a slow clock. I only knew that the world I had carried through the sky had a seam I hadn't noticed, and someone had just put their finger on it. Mom said, "We don't speak to strangers," and for the first time I can remember, I did not listen. The stranger's words at baggage claim would not come until later. For now, the only thing filling the cabin was absence, the absence of my parents' voices, their eyes, their acknowledgement that I was even there. It had started on the jet bridge already, the way Dad had walked ahead as if the path were only wide enough for him, the way Mom had nodded at Lena, the flight attendant, without noticing she had just cut me off mid-sentence. But on the plane, silence became architecture. They sat together in row 4, Economy Plus, where the legroom pretends to be gratitude. Their seats were side by side, a little oasis. My ticket said 24B. The alphabet has never felt so much like exile. I could see them, if I craned my neck just right, through the breaks in the seats when passengers leaned forward, Mom tilting her head toward Dad's shoulder, whispering something that made him smile. A shared world, a small fortress built of eye contact and familiarity. Not malicious, maybe, just selective. Selective in the way that can erase a person even when they are 20 rows away on the same plane. The crossword man beside me filled box steady ink. The woman with the hat adjusted her brim so the light didn't catch her cheek. "Long flight?" she asked politely. "Not long enough," I almost said. What I answered was, "A couple of hours." She nodded, satisfied with the neutral. People are often more comfortable with answers that leave no residue. The drink cart rattled down the aisle. Lena was there again, moving with practiced balance, her hand braced against the seat backs like she was steadying everyone, not just herself. "Something for you?" she asked. "Water," I said. "Of course." She poured it, handed it over with a napkin. On the napkin was the airline's logo, a stylized bird, wings outstretched. It reminded me of the napkin with the blue heron years ago. That one had been taken from me. This one I smoothed flat on the tray table, determined to keep it. "Where are you headed?" the crossword man asked me. "Family," I said. "My brother, my parents, a gathering." He tapped his pen. "Sounds complicated." "That's one word for it." Up front, I could see Dad gesturing as he spoke to the flight attendant. 2 fingers, sharp, a habit of his. He probably wanted to switch meals, or trade his wine for something he thought should already have been free. Mom leaned back, satisfied with whatever solution arrived. She didn't turn, didn't glance, didn't check if I was comfortable. The hum of the engines was steady, hypnotic. But inside me, another hum had started. Memory. When I was 7, we flew to Florida. Evan got the window seat, of course. Mom leaned across him to point out clouds shaped like castle, a coastline like a necklace. I pressed my forehead against the middle seat tray table, trying to imagine the view through the window. Dad told the flight attendant, "We'll need more peanuts." He didn't mean me. When I was 15, we drove through Kansas. The radio broke, so Dad filled the car with stories of business deal, who had folded, who had triumphed. Mom chimed in about fabrics she liked for the new curtains. In the back seat, I said once, "The sky looks endless." No one replied. The silence was a verdict. Now, in row 24, turbulence began again, just enough to rattle cups, to remind us that air is never still. The woman with the hat clutched her armrest. "I hate this part," she said. "Me too," I admitted. The crossword man smiled faintly. "I pretend it's music." The percussion section. The plane dipped, then steadied. Laughter here, a gasp there, but mostly the quiet resolve of people who have paid to trust physics. I tried to breathe evenly. In for 4, out for 6. Somewhere up front, Dad laughed at something Mom said. It was clear, audible even this far back, cutting across the cabin like it had been designed to carry. I envied the passengers who thought it was just the laugh of a man in row 4. To me, it was the sound of belonging that would never include me. I closed my eyes. Behind them, Images shuffled like cards. Dad at the head of a table, Mom arranging flowers, Evan's texts buzzing with urgency. Always busy, always important, always in orbit together. Me, circling outside. "Are you okay?" Lena's voice startled me. She had stopped at my row again, one hand on the seat back, leaning close. "Yes," I said automatically. Her eyes studied me, not unkind. "You're traveling with the couple in row 4? I blinked. "Yes, they're my parents." She hesitated, then nodded. "I thought so." She didn't say more. She didn't have to. The fact that she had noticed the absence was already too much kindness. The meal service came and went. My tray held a small rectangle of pasta, lukewarm but edible. Up front, I saw Dad tilt his plate toward Mom so she could sample, his fork angled toward her mouth, their communion. I stabbed a piece of pasta and chewed it slowly, tasting nothing. Later, the lights dimmed, that artificial twilight designed to trick bodies into rest. The crossword man fell asleep, pen slipping from his hand. The woman with the hat closed her eyes and murmured a prayer I didn't recognize. I stayed awake, staring at the safety card, memorizing the illustrations, the slide, the brace position, the exit rows, instructions for survival, simplified for mass consumption. None of them covered what to do when the people you are supposed to brace against are the ones erasing you. I opened my phone again, scrolling through old photos. Me at 8, holding a sparkler, blurred because Dad had framed Evan better. Me at 16, leaning against a fence, cropped at the edges because Mom had zoomed on the dog. In each image, I was present, but peripheral, proof of existence, not evidence of mattering. The captain announced our descent. The city glittered below like a promise. Passengers stirred, reclaiming bags, folding blankets. Up front, Dad rose to open the overhead for Mom. She laughed softly when he nearly dropped her jacket. The intimacy of small mistakes shared. I stayed seated until Lena passed and gave me the nod again. "Now," she mouthed. I stepped into the aisle, heart pounding. People moved aside just enough. The man with the crossword nodded goodbye. The woman with the hat said, "Safe travels, dear." At the door, Lena braced herself against the frame. "You're all right," she said. "Am I?" I asked, surprising myself again. She smiled. "You're seen. That's a start." I walked into the jet bridge, cooler air rushing at me, metal and concrete replacing the hum of engine. Behind me, Dad's voice floated from row 4. "We'll head straight to the car," he said to Mom. No time to waste. They hadn't looked back once. I followed the stream of passengers toward baggage claim, my parents a few steps ahead, their silhouettes solid in the fluorescent light. I was just beginning to think the flight was finished, that invisibility would be the final story, when I noticed him. The man in the navy linen jacket, the one I'd seen glance at me more than once during the flight. He wasn't following my parents, he was watching me. And when our eyes met, he gave a small nod, as though he had been waiting for this moment. The baggage claim area was always too bright, too loud, too indifferent. Suitcases slammed onto the carousel like bodies falling, the belt groaning as it dragged people's belongings into endless circle. Families clustered in uneven clumps, calling out colors of bags like bingo numbers. The air smelled faintly of rubber and coffee from the kiosk in the corner. My parents moved through it like seasoned generals. Dad positioned himself right at the edge of the chute, the place where luggage first crashed onto the belt. His stance said he owned the system, that he would intercept what was his before anyone else could touch it. Mom stayed back near the carts, lips pursed, eyes narrowed at each case sliding past. I stood a little behind them, hands in my pocket, pretending I had chosen the spot rather than been relegated to it. My backpack strap dug into my shoulder. I stared at the carousel, hypnotized by the endless loop of black, gray, and navy bags. None of them mine yet. Then I felt it, that gaze again. The man in the navy linen jacket stood on the opposite side of the carousel. He wasn't watching the bags. He was watching me. His posture was composed, but his eyes carried a weight I couldn't place. When our gazes locked, he nodded once, a subtle gesture, like a secret being passed across the room. I looked away quickly, my stomach tightening. Maybe he was just another stranger. Maybe I was projecting, hungry for recognition where there was none. But when I looked back, he was still watching. And then he began to move. He walked slowly, deliberately, weaving through the clusters of families and tired business travelers until he stood directly across from us. His eyes flicked to my parents briefly, then returned to me, steady, certain. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but tinged with nerves. "I'm sorry to bother you." Mom turned her head sharply, her expression frosted with suspicion. Dad, mid-sentence on a phone call, lowered the device just enough to glare. The man ignored them. His eyes stayed on me. "I think I know you." My breath caught. The carousel clanged, releasing another suitcase. People jostled forward to claim it. The world went on, oblivious, while my own axis tilted. Mom's voice was cold, immediate. "We don't speak to strangers." The man's jaw tightened, but he didn't look at her. "This isn't about you," he said softly. Then, to me, I knew your mother. Your real mother. The floor seemed to drop beneath me. My legs wobbled. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. The word real echoed in my head, louder than the announcements overhead, louder than the clatter of luggage. Dad stepped forward, his phone now shoved in his pocket. "That's enough," he snapped. "You're mistaken. Leave us alone." But the man didn't move. His eyes stayed on mine, unwavering. "She was my sister," he said quietly, "and before she passed, she told me she had a daughter." I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line, color draining from her face. Dad's nostrils flared. "That's not true," Mom said quickly. Too quickly. "Don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about." But I was already listening. The man's words had lodged themselves into the cracks of everything I'd ever wondered, everything I'd ever felt. The distance, the coldness, the way my parents had always treated me like an afterthought, like an obligation instead of blood. He took a small step closer, careful not to invade, careful not to spook me. "Your name," he said softly, "is a story, and I think I know how it begins." My throat was tight, but I forced sound through it. Who are you?" "My name is Marcus," he said. "I've been searching for years. I didn't know if I'd ever find you." Mom's voice rose, sharp, panicked. "This is insane. He's lying. We adopted you, yes, but..." She stopped, realizing too late what she had admitted. The air around us froze. My ears rang. "Adopted!" The word burst like a flare in the dark. Dad cursed under his breath, glaring at Mom. The secret had slipped out, unplanned, unpolished. Marcus's expression softened, grief mingling with relief. "You see?" he said gently. "You always wondered why you felt invisible, didn't you? Why they treated you differently." Tears stung my eyes. My parents looked like statues, rigid, cornered. For the first time, I saw fear in Dad's face, not anger. The carousel kept turning, bags thudding onto the belt. No one around us noticed the quiet earthquake happening at its edge. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked my parents. Mom's eyes darted away. Dad's jaw clenched. Silence. That same silence I had lived inside all my life. Marcus stepped closer, his voice steady. "Because they couldn't love you the way she did. But she did. She loved you fiercely. She wanted you to know." Something cracked inside me. Years of being unseen, unacknowledged, dismissed. It all rearranged itself in that single instant. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't inherently unwanted. I had been someone's choice once, someone's treasure. The carousel beeped, signaling the last bags. Dad muttered something I couldn't catch. Mom reached for her suitcase, her hands shaking. I stood still, my bag at my side. My whole world split into before and after. Marcus held my gaze. "You're not alone anymore," he said quietly. "If you want to know more, I'm here." My parents' silence was louder than the entire airport. For once, I didn't try to fill it. I turned toward Marcus, and for the first time in my life, I felt seen.